to Almighty God. But it's work. Well, some of you, it's not so much work. I've been preaching this series, and I've had quite a few people come up to me and say, I've never doubted. And I said, you're a liar. No, I didn't say that. I was taken aback. I went, wow, that's amazing. They're great people. They love the Lord. I would not doubt them. They're telling me the truth. And man, that's not me. And maybe it's not you either. I've had my doubts concerning everything, but even concerning my God. It's work. It's work to keep believing. I didn't say that. Jesus said that. I've said this the last couple of weeks too, or quoted John 6, verse 28, when the disciples asked Jesus, what must we do to do the work of God? Now there's the question. What must we do to do the work of God? Jesus answered, the work of God is this, to believe. And that's where I am, doing the work of God. Now let me finish Jesus' statement, to believe in the one He has sent, to believe in Jesus. That is my labor. That is my toil. But it is labor and it is toil to keep believing and to keep the faith. Is anybody here with me? Does anybody else want to admit that that might be a problem for you in your life too? It's work to believe. Now, what is the work? Well, what does it mean to have faith in God? Well, in Hebrews 11, if I can get it up on the screen, Hebrews 11, verse 1. Maybe we can get it on the screen. There it is. Now, faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. Now, the first part, pretty easy. In other words, faith is the substance, the essence of things you hope for. Man, we all have that built in us. I think that's another evidence of being designed by God. It's all in every human being. We all have that desire to hope for a better time and a better place. And there must be something besides this, you know. The essence of things we hope for, but that's down here. That's in the heart. That's feeling. What about the second part? That gets it up here in the mind, into the brain. You have faith up there. A lot of you have faith in your heart. You don't have faith up here. I feel like it's probably true, but I don't know. The second part deals with that. The evidence of things not seen. Is there evidence of God? Yes. Lots of it. Well, what if I take you outside and have you look at somebody else's car? And you'd look at that car, and I say somebody else's, because if you look at my car, you'd think it probably could have just sort of happened, all right? But look at somebody else's car that's got a nice car, all right? And you look at their car. As you sit there and look at that car, or stand there and look at that beautiful car, does it lead you to believe somebody somewhere put that together? Or did it just materialize in the parking lot? That's what they're asking me to believe, many scientists, that it just sort of materialized in the parking lot. And that's just the car. It's not even close to being as intricate as our universe. So I'm looking at the universe, and that's some evidence, the Bible says. Now, I am no scientist. All I can do is share with you what other scientists have said. So understand that as I go through the lesson today and some of the evidences of God, this is not from me. I'm not smart enough to think this up, but there are people in this world who spend their lives dealing with such matters. Scientists like Newton, Isaac Newton, and Kepler, and Boyle, Galileo, Copernicus, those men, those scientists who were the beginning of what we call modern science. It's all built on scientists like this. The modern science we have in the world today was built on their findings. And they all, Newton, Kepler, Boyle, Galileo, Copernicus, all looked at the universe and deduced, they reasoned from the evidence that it could not just have materialized. There had to be what they called a rational intellect that put it all together. They looked at the evidence, and it led them to the unseen. Somebody or something had to be behind this. Isaac Newton wrote in the 18th century, "This most beautiful system of sun, comets, and planets could only proceed from the counsel and dominion of an intelligent and powerful being." That was his end result. Not every scientist agreed. I don't want to leave the wrong impression. Not every scientist agreed with Isaac Newton. Some scientists continued to hold their materialistic or naturalistic worldview. The worldview is kind of how you see everything. Let me describe for you the points of the naturalistic worldview that we hear so much of today. The naturalistic or materialistic worldview is this. Number one, that the particles of the universe have always existed. That these particles somehow arranged themselves and became living stuff. The living stuff became somehow aware. And that the living stuff, now aware, evolved and eventually came up with the idea of a God. So just like in the Garden of Eden, you didn't come from God. God really kind of came from you. You're the center of the universe. And we see a country that individuals believe they're the center of the universe, don't we? And it was pretty straightforward for them. That was the beginning of modern science, that the universe has just always been here. You say God has always been here. I say the universe has always been here. And that seemed to satisfy everyone in those early 1900s and 1800s, going back a ways. All worked well for them until a telescope, a powerful domed telescope, Edwin Hubble, the same Hubble the satellite's named after, walked into his domed telescope on Mount Wilson, Palomar Observatory in Mount Wilson, California, and started looking up at this universe. The heavens declare the glory of God. And he started seeing the glory of God. Now, before that, we'd always thought there was just one solar system, just one galaxy. And he began to notice, man, there's lots of galaxies. There are millions, maybe more than I could ever count. Galaxies everywhere you look, and we didn't know that until then. We have some pictures. Do you have the pictures up? I guess we do. They're ahead of me, aren't they? But that doesn't take much, by the way. But you're ahead of me. Now, these are the pictures. You'll notice in that upper right picture especially what he saw, though, and that's not even the great part, that there's all this universe we didn't even know was there. The great part is the stars, he noticed, were different colors. They weren't all white, and some were turning yellow, and some were turning red. And he began to think, you know what? I know what that means. That means the universe is expanding, and every scientist believes that now, that the universe is expanding. But that posed a problem. Posed a problem for a man named Albert Einstein. He was working on the theory of relativity and how planets relate to other planets and stars to stars and galaxies we got. He was working on all that at the same time, pretty much. And he mathematically, through his theory of relativity, figured that out. The universe is expanding. He didn't like it. He was a naturalist. He even fudged the numbers to kind of show how it's just always been where it is. It's not really expanding. He would later say that was his biggest mistake, and he knew it was wrong. He just didn't like the fact that it was expanding. Why didn't he like the fact that it was expanding? In fact, he wouldn't believe it because he had fudged the numbers and he kind of went on with his life. Hubble invited him to the telescope, and after he saw through the telescope, he came out in 1931. You can look the pictures up, and there was the press standing there, and Einstein and Hubble there together, and Einstein has the funny hair, and yes, I have to admit there was a beginning. If the universe is expanding, you can reverse the process. In fact, it must be reversed scientifically. It goes back to the beginning. Einstein hated that. But it was true. His math had proved it. The empirical evidence of looking into the sky proved it. His theory of relativity proved it. And now all the scientists, the fact that they talk about a Big Bang says they believe it began. It began. The universe had a beginning. What does that mean? Oh, that's huge. The universe isn't the all in all, then. What began it? Or who began it? And in the field of quantum physics, they're trying to go beyond the beginning to figure out what could have been floating around that could have began the universe. They got string theory, all kinds of things they have. You've probably heard that on TV once in a while. But the point is, all of that, quantum physics, has to do with the admission that it began. They have no theories. There is no quantum physics theory. There's not even a hypothesis. Nothing. It's produced nothing. Well, that led to men like Fred Burnham, a physicist, saying, the God hypothesis is now, I like the way he puts that, just can't bring himself to it. The God hypothesis is now a more persuasive and respectable hypothesis than at any time in the last 100 years because of this discovery and other discoveries. And Stephen Meyer, PhD in science of Cambridge University, graduated from Cambridge University. Stephen Meyer, speaking all over about the 4 great discoveries of modern science that prove God exists. Can you imagine that? The 4 modern scientific discoveries that prove God exists. Do you want to hear what they are? Do I have your attention? They sure got my attention. Get your pencils. I'm going to list them for you here today. I said that last Sunday, then gave you one, then strung you along to this week, but this takes time to get through this. I'm going to give them all to you today, all right? Before I do that, let me read 2 verses of Scripture for you. Number 1, Psalm 19:1. The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of His hands. Look to the heavens, and you will see evidence of an unseen God. Or an unseen something, if you're not there yet. Psalm 139:14. That's the other verse. And this is the verse that my buddy back there, Ian, shared with us today already. Kind of stole my thunder, but that's okay. I told him to do it. I will praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. So let's take those two verses. Look to the heavens. There's evidence there. And then you are fearfully and wonderfully made. Look inside yourself, and you will see the glory of God. That's Bible. It's been around forever, hasn't it? At least since the prophets. Here they are. Recent discovery number one. The universe had a beginning. We've already talked about that all last Sunday morning. And you can get that if you want to listen to it. And I've spoken a little bit about that this morning as well. The universe, it's not eternal. Nobody believes that. It's not eternal. It has not always been. It's just basic science. Someone or something made this. And it's bigger than a car. Somebody made it. Science calls it, I like this, the transcending cause. There had to be some transcending cause of the universe. Recent discovery number two that proved God exists. Science and time had a beginning. I said science. Space and time had a beginning. This is mind-boggling. I don't grasp all of this. I'm relying on scientists, but let me give it the best shot I can. If the universe is expanding, then you can reverse it and get back to what scientists call the 0 point. I've shared that with you. It goes back to the 0 point to where it didn't exist at all. It collapses on itself. That's science. At that point, space has been crushed to the point where space and time do not exist. Now, I'm not going to get into that here. We got into that last Sunday night. But there was a 0 point, and not only does matter, it's not eternal. Space and time, science has now proven, space nor time is eternal either. Like I said, it's kind of mind-blowing, but I'll just say this. Someone or something that is not constrained or influenced by matter, material things, space, or time, that knows no matter or no space or no time, someone or something started the universe. Science. You may want to go deeper and study that finding, study that for yourself. But it's real. Let's move on. I don't have all the time in the world. Discovery number 3. The laws of constants. Constants meaning it's just constant. Everything about this universe is just constant. It's just always there, on time, where it should be, when it should be. The laws of constants have been meticulously fine-tuned. It's science. It's like, and I'll meet you here tonight and we'll discuss this more, this third theory. Got number 2 in last Sunday night the best we could with everything going on. Number 3's tonight. But the idea, it's kind of like this. If there's all these billions of dials, it would take billions, trillions, countless dials. But if each one, maybe this would influence the space between Earth and the moon, and this would influence the space between this galaxy and that, and they have been just fine-tuned so that you can live your life on this earth, so that the universe works and supports life. One researcher writes, a common sense interpretation of the evidence suggests a super intellect, there it is, a super intellect has monkeyed, they got to get monkeys in there somewhere, don't they? Have monkeyed with physics and chemistry to make life possible. It's science. It's evidence that the universe had a beginning, that space and time had a beginning, that the laws of constants have been so finely tuned that it mathematically could not have happened had some intellect not fine-tuned it. You can study this through on your own. I'm just trying to start the conversation. But it's real and it's science, and you can learn it. Somebody made this. Somebody fine-tuned it. In fact, my belief is, my worldview is, it continues to be fine-tuned. I want to be a good steward of the planet. I'm not all that worried about global warming, because if it gets too warm, God will just fine-tune it. But if you're a naturalist, you can't go there, can you? We're destroying it all. It's not ours to destroy. It's too big for us. And for them too. Think about that. It had a beginning. Time and space had a beginning. That's science. The laws of constants have been fine-tuned. And you see that as you look into the heavens. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the skies showeth forth His handiwork. But now it's time, as Ian said earlier, it's time, because I don't have all day to do this, and we're going to continue with other things next week. But hear me. It's time now to stop looking through the telescope and start turning to the microscope and looking inside. We are fearfully and wonderfully made. And that gets us to another discovery. These aren't all of them, but discovery number 4. The microscopic universe, that is the living cell inside you, inside everything that lives. That is life. Get the microscope, look inside that. You got the big universe, that macro universe. Go to that micro universe, the living cell, and see how that operates. And that's as mind-blowing as the big universe. Atheist Ralph Muncaster became a Christian because he started doing just that. You can read his work. I love his Skeptic's Search for God. That's an amazing book. You won't understand it, but it gets the point made. Well, maybe you will. Ralph Muncaster, but he was an atheist, and he says this, and I'll just read what he says. I had just scratched the surface of molecular biology and what we looked up before. So I just scratched the surface of molecular biology, the sheer complexity, and even a simplified cell, an amoeba. By the way, an amoeba has more DNA than you do. Did you know that? Don't think the amoeba could just appear. It's more complex in its DNA than you are. But that's off the point. The sheer complexity and even a simplified cell structure caused me to wonder how these billions of parts could billions of parts just randomly come together in just the right way. He compares it to winning the lottery by buying one ticket. If you won that lottery, I don't know, it's like 167 billion times in a row. That's the mathematical probability this all could have just happened. It ain't going to happen. In fact, they call that mathematically impossible, is what scientists call that. Let me keep reading. That would just be the first step of naturalistic evolution. He talked about these billions of parts. When I considered further that there are about 75 trillion cells in the human body with about 210 cell types, I started to have my first doubts about evolution, that this could have just happened. The sheer number of parts and changes in this specialization seemed almost too incredible to believe. He went to professors in colleges, in universities, trying to get answers. All they would do is make fun of him. Read his book. They wouldn't answer his questions. They could not answer his questions. They just made fun of him. Got him thinking. As I had done so often before, I assumed that scientists must have good reasons to believe evolution, though I decided to research more to find out why. I asked myself the following questions. So he asked these questions. How would a correct individual component know to arrive? How would all the components know to assemble properly? How would the cell's surface, including the cytoskeleton, know to somehow cover the cell to protect it, allowing it to work? How would it know to do that? How would something of such complexity all happen at once, by themselves, with nothing, not even DNA, to control it? Where would the information as to how all the cell components should work, where would the information come from that's built into every cell in your body? And then, how would you energize life? I know it gets technical. And this isn't a science class, but Francis Crick, back in the 1950s, did major research on the DNA within a cell. He writes that along the spine, that spiral ladder, along the spine of the DNA molecule, there are 4 chemicals present called chemical bases. There's 4 chemicals in your DNA that function like characters in an alphabet or digital characters in a machine code that, as Ian is studying, makes you who you are. It's like if you're driving down the road, these new cars now, they'll see a car in front of you and they will brake for you. They'll just do it whether you want them to or not. They'll just do it. It's all built into the digital code. You are all built into God's digital code. And that's what Francis Crick is getting to here. Like the digital code in a computer. You can have all the components of the computer, but it won't be a computer until somebody puts information in it or something. And mathematically impossible for it by billions and billions for it just to appear. Even scientists don't believe that. In every cell of your body, there are 3 billion characters of precise information in your digital code that is in every cell of your body that instructs the cell how to build complex molecules and what organ they are building inside your body that you can live. 3 billion characters of precise information inside every cell of your body. That's what makes you alive. And what the scientists are grappling with is, where did all this information come from? How did it get there? That which enables motion, reproduction, growth, and life. How did it get there? It can't be replicated, can't be reproduced. in the most sophisticated labs in the world. Forget the creek out beside your house. In the most sophisticated labs in the world, they can't put these 3 billion characters of precise information in anything and then cause that thing to live. The 4 chemicals of DNA, they are there. The particles are there. They can do that. But the information that animates the cell, it isn't there. It just lies there dead. I want you to see what's going on inside some of the cells in your body right now. I've got a little video for about 1.5 minutes. Will you watch it with me? Can we get that video on? I want you to see what happens inside every cell in your body right now.
Darwin's theory of evolution rests on the idea that the incredibly complex web of life today all evolved from simple chemicals and cells. No creator was necessary, just chance and the powers of the fittest forms of life to survive and adapt. But Darwin couldn't see into cells and DNA like scientists of the modern age. He couldn't know these building blocks of life work because of intricate little machines in each cell, so intricate there's no chance they could simply evolve. Darwin couldn't know that DNA functions, life itself functions, because of incredibly complex code, way beyond what even the most brilliant computer programmers have devised. Secular scientists often mock the simple faith of those who believe in an unseen God. But statisticians say the odds are impossible this incredibly intricate, elegant code could ever just evolve. And thus it takes much more faith to believe in such chance than it does to believe an intelligent designer is behind this code at the core of all life.
Information runs the show. The digital code in the DNA molecule is essential to life. Every cell that has ever lived, including that first one little cell that came along. Scientists say the universe was begun about 3.5 billion years ago. Don't care if you believe that or not. Scientists say that about, trying to recall all of this, but maybe 3.85 billion years ago, life began. Simple forms of life is what they say. But about 530 or so million years ago, if you was on a football field, this would be 8 inches of the 100 yards, a very short period of time, as far as scientists are concerned in the universe. Many, many Christians believe the universe is about 7,000 years old. But anyway, different worldview. But if we go with the scientists, call it the Cambrian period, when all this life just exploded. These complex life forms, plants just exploded, animals just exploded about 500 or so years ago, million years ago. Where did all this infusion of information come from? That's the question. You've got some evidence now. The question of faith is, where did it come from? There was information built into the universe for it to be precise. There's so much more intricate information built into the living cell. The first thing you must account for when you look through your microscope, you must account for the origin of the information that is in the DNA. There are 4 worldviews. Let me just chop it off and end it here. There are 4 worldviews. Can I get those up there? You got the Big Bang. We'll call that creation, but we're trying to talk somewhat scientifically. the Big Bang. You got four basic worldviews. You've got naturalism. Cannot be scientifically. The universe hasn't always been here. And for naturalism to exist, they said it has always been here. So the materialistic, naturalistic point of view, that cannot be. Pantheism can't be. That's those religions of the Eastern world, especially today, the mystical Eastern religions, and they just believe God isn't a real person. He's a force inside all of matter. He's that force that motivates the matter and the life. But if the universe hadn't always been here, without matter, you don't have a God anymore. So that can't be. That leaves us with two, and I'm hurrying here. Leaves you with deism and theism. What's deism? That is that religious mindset that God created the world or the universe, then just left it alone, just walked away from it. Problem is, we now know that information was infused into the universe in a certain time frame, and very quickly, too quick to evolve, and in stages to get deeper. I'd call those 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. That's what I'd call them. All very quickly. So God apparently did not walk away. Whoever made this did not walk away from it. He's still very involved in His universe. Which leaves us theism. And I submit to you that is the only worldview that provides explanation for all of this. The only view there is that provides adequate explanation for all of this. That God or gods created it and is actively involved in it. Theism, the belief in God. I'm not against science. In fact, I love science. I think science is what eventually brings us to God. I know somebody last week gave me a beautiful little article that I thought was terrific. It was written, I still got it on her handwriting, but she handed this to me this past week, from Werner Heisenberg, the father of quantum physics. The first gulp from the glass of natural sciences will make you an atheist, he says. But at the bottom of the glass, God is waiting for you. Oh, that was terrific. I like better even what Robert Jastrow, an astronomer, writes. This is an exceedingly strange development, unexpected by all but the theologians. They have always accepted the word of the Bible. In the beginning, God created the heaven and earth. It is unexpected because science has had such extraordinary success in tracing the chain of cause and effect backward in time. For the scientist who has lived by his faith in the power of reason, the story ends like a bad dream, Jastrow writes. He has scaled the mountains of ignorance. He is about to conquer the highest peak. As he pulls himself over the final rock, he is greeted by a band of theologians who have been sitting there for centuries. They're making their way to God. We're already there. They'll catch up. . What about you in your personal life? That's what I'm interested in. Most people just don't think about it. Where'd we come from? I don't know about that stuff. I don't care about that stuff. I don't believe that stuff. Well, okay. Don't think about it ever. But if you think about it, the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things that are not seen with your eyes, you'll get there. If you're there. Oh, by the way, is it the God of... Who is God? Is He many gods? Is He the God of the Bible? Why do I believe that? That He's the God of the Bible. That's next week, next Sunday. It's real, folks. It's here. It's scientific. You don't have to accept it. That's between you and the Lord. But it's real. And He is the God of the Bible. Let's stand. Let's praise Him for a moment. Let's stand.